Why? The last few guests have really been buttering me up here.
We want to be invited more.
Well, this is how it all started. The Brockeninger kicked this off. So it's always a pleasure to have you back
Love to
on.
keep it real and love to get into some issues that are near and dear to the hearts of Canadians who watch this on a regular basis.
So today we're talking C-9. Like I said in the intro, some call it the anti-hate bill. Some say it's the anti-religious freedom bill.
Yes.
What is C-9 for those just tuning in and not up to speed?
Well, it was the government's attempt, after literally remaining on their hands and doing absolutely nothing since post-October 7, 2023. It was their attempt to start dealing with the rising levels of anti-Semitism in this country. And they claim they've been listening to religious leaders who wanted greater protections. Greater protections in terms of attending at their synagogues, attending at their mosques, attending at their temples. They wanted greater protection, more laws to provide policing with some clearer authority in which to ensure that they had the lawful way of getting from point A to point B, but not to be intimidated and harassed. So literally, we know this government, this liberal government, has done absolutely nothing. We've had a liberal government that has a divided caucus. On the one hand, we got those who support a free Israel, free to defend itself, and we've got part of that caucus who really is very supportive of Palestine and to some degree supportive of all the very dangerous and reckless demonstrations that have existed for the last 2 years and continue, almost 3 years, and continue on our streets. So again, the government claims we were listening, we were finally introducing legislation. They promised they would do that in the 25 election. Why it literally took them 6-7 months to introduce this piece of legislation is a mystery. But nevertheless, that's what it's designed at its core. We feel that this was an unnecessary piece of legislation because the problems were not because the police lacked the tools. The problem was a lack of will by the police officers to enforce the current laws that had been in the books for decades, dealing with the very same issues that a number of religious groups have been complaining about, and police not exercising their sworn duty to uphold the laws, not looking at the criminal code like I want to look at the criminal code as in a lens of black and white. They were looking at it through the lens of a gray mixture. And in some cases, and I'm not going to identify where I got this information from, but I traveled across this country, spoke to law enforcement, spoke to many, many religious groups, as did our colleague Andrew Lawton. And what we heard were, in many, many cases, police officers not exercising their sworn duty, but being more of peace officers as opposed to police officers, allowing criminality to literally occur right in front of them.
Would that filter down from the politicians to the...
Well, they were getting some direction from municipal leaders, of course, mayors and council, and obviously administration within the police service itself. So in our view, it was an unnecessary, redundant piece of legislation. If the police only enforced the laws, this country would be in a different place.
Now, unfortunately, the Liberals did some other things too.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. They took away some protections for religious leaders, and we're going to turn, as we queue up cut one, to a very astute individual to tell us what happened in that instance. Play cut one.
Thank you.
This Liberal government made a political decision to support the Bloc Amendment to remove a 56-year-old religious defense in the criminal code. The removal of defenses in the criminal code is extremely rare. Instead of dividing Canadians, which this particular position does, we've heard from millions of Canadians, thousands of faith leaders who are writing to their Liberal MPs, who are writing to the Prime Minister. They do not support the removal of this defence. It was done for political reasons. This government needs to prioritize issues that are facing Canadians on a daily basis. We've had 10 years of rising crime levels and very little substantive criminal law policies and laws to protect Canadians.
Can you smell what the Brock is cooking?
You know
right
what?
there.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I know what a handsome guy there on that screen. He should be out and about more. You
I
know
think
what
he should.
He's,
I think he should travel
makes
this
sense.
country.
So that's what kind of ticked off religious leaders. I shouldn't say it in that term because religious leaders don't get angry that well, but concern them, I guess.
Yes.
It kind of raised inquired minds to what was going on in Ottawa, and they noticed that some changes that the Bloc were putting on the table and the government was supporting didn't sit too well with them.
No. Well, as you know, Bill C-9 passed last night. For those who are watching this a week removed, it happened on the 26th of March and is now en route to the Senate. But one thing I think we need to be abundantly clear. This support of the Bloc amendment came halfway through the study of Bill C-9. It was never introduced by this Liberal government. They never spoke about the removal of a religious defense. There were no witnesses called by any party, the Liberals, the Conservative Party, even the NDP who supported this particular amendment never called any witnesses. So we were denied the ability to really delve into this issue to see whether or not this is what this country required at this time, or whether it is going to have the negative consequences that we truly believe this particular amendment is going to have. And it really, it culminated into a real critical moment when Mark Miller, who is now Minister of Cultural Identity and Heritage, as he was then the Liberal chair of the Justice Committee, made the following comments after all committee members had actually asked questions of a particular religious leader. This was October 31st of last year. He made a point of saying that there is clear hatred in some books of the Bible and Torah. He singled out Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Romans. Clearly, he said, there are situations in these texts where these statements are hateful. They should not be used to invoke or be a defense. And then he said, prosecutors should be able to press charges. The moment that statement was made, it sent a chill across this nation for all religious leaders, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, anyone practicing any religion in this country, all the followers of those faiths received a very, very disturbing message from this Liberal government that reading passages, some thousands and thousands of years old, could be interpreted in such a way that would invite a police service to investigate, lay a charge, and requiring the prosecution service of that city and province to actually continue a prosecution. That has sent off a chain reaction across this country, the likes I have never seen as an elected representative. I'm not sure about you, Jamie, but every single week, my office, I'm sure every other Conservative colleague is receiving daily information from concerned parishioners, concerned religious leaders in our community saying, do what you have to do to stop this dangerous move by this Liberal government. We've been inviting them, and I know that they have followed through on this because I've got evidence of this, have been writing Liberal MPs, have been writing the Prime Minister saying, back off. We do not need you to meddle with our rights to express ourselves and our rights to practice our religion. We do have freedom of religion, freedom of expression in our charter. So now when I hear this Liberal government, when I hear the Prime Minister, when I hear Sean Fraser, our Justice Minister, when I hear from a litany of other Liberal MPs saying, oh, you don't have to worry, Canadians. You don't have to worry, faith leaders. You still have your charter rights. Where have we heard that before, Jamie?
Yeah, we've heard that a few times.
We heard that a few years ago during the invocation of the Emergencies Act.
That was illegal.
Haven't we?
Yeah.
Trust us.
Trust us. We got this.
Trust us.
Yeah, we've heard that
This
before.
is charter compliant.
Well, let's hear the Justice Minister himself, Sean Fraser. Let's cue up cut 2, where he says exactly that. Play cut 2.
I like to take people at their word when it comes to the objections that they raise at committee. It's clear that the Conservatives and some stakeholders fairly across Canada raise concerns about the proposed removal of the existing good faith religious defence. We responded to those concerns. I met personally with faith leaders from different communities of interest and heard from many different folks across the country. And we felt that the concerns that they had were accommodated by the amendment that we put forward.
Is that true?
No. No.
Not at all.
I don't know who he spoke with, but there were groups that approached us and said, yes, we did hear from the Justice Department. Yes, we asked for a proper explanation as to why now, after so many months had passed, you never raised it as an issue. Why is it important now? Never got an answer, Jamie. They tried to soften the blow. They realized that probably Conservatives would not have sufficient votes, and clearly we didn't. The Liberals and the Bloc Québécois numbered 5, we numbered 4. There was no way we could defeat that inclusion into Bill C-9. So they actually proposed language that they believed would reinforce the rights of expression and reinforce the freedom of religion. We took that, we asked them, did you share this with the government? They confirmed that they did. But the amendment that we did see from the government did not include the language from several of those groups. When I proposed that to the Justice Minister and his parliamentary secretary, they invited me to come up with additional language. We did that, Jamie. In fact, we stood down a particular committee hearing not too long ago with a view of strengthening this proposed amendment. And then when I presented it to the Justice Minister, not the Justice Minister, the parliamentary secretary, she came back and said, if we agree to this, you have to agree that all remaining clause-by-clause considerations be completed within the next hour. And if we didn't complete it within the next hour, that you would have no further opportunity of having any further meetings, and it would be deemed to have been completed and then reported back to the House. We said absolutely not. That is not the definition of negotiating in good faith, right? I appreciated their need to ensure, a reasonable opportunity to move this back into the House, into the Senate, but there has to be a process. We are living in a democracy. This was a minority government that Canadians voted for, not a majority government. They expected us to work collaboratively together. We did so in good faith. Ironic, I use that word good faith because that's the defense that they are now taking away. But they don't exercise good faith. Right. They say one thing to the Canadian public, they actually do quite another.
You just summarized the whole 10 years.
It is the absolute.
But he has only begun. All Liberals have done is double housing costs, inflated food prices, and unleash crime and corruption on our streets. Pierre is fighting back. His purpose is that so Canadians can have strong take-home pay, safe streets, secure borders in a self-reliant country. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a warm welcome to the leader of his official opposition, Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Phil. And thank you to the great Michelle Ferreri for choosing this spectacular location. I understand the Elmhurst farm has been here for 250 years. Do I have that right? What's that? 207. 207 years. So it's 250 with inflation. But that's still 2 centuries long that this incredible family farm has been passed down the ages from father to son, mother to daughter, where hard work has been done and great people are fed. I understand you have some beef as well, so maybe I brought my credit card, so maybe I can bring home a freezer full. Thank you very much for hosting us today, and thank you very much to the great Phil Lawrence, businessman, father. He owns a vineyard, and he's a great member of Parliament. And what he and Michelle and all Conservatives want is a country that's affordable at home, safe at home, and strong at home. We need an affordable government so that Canadians can have affordable lives. That means stronger take-home pay with lower income taxes and greater buying power with lower government inflation and energy taxes. It means unblocking our resources and home building with fast permits and low costs. On a besoin d'un gouvernement abordable pour une vie abordable. Ça veut dire un gouvernement plus petit et moins de taxes pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat. We want to be able to buy a home, because home ownership means they'll have a stake in their future, the chance to start a family, and to build their net worth. We want parents who've already started families to be able to feed their kids nutritious food while they pay off their mortgages and take their children to sports and family vacations that build lifelong memories. These are the things that we all used to take for granted in Canada a little over a decade ago, but now they seem unrealistic. People cannot afford life under the costly Carney Liberals. Liberal debt, taxes, and gatekeeping have given Canada the worst food inflation and the worst housing costs in the G7. Food bank use has doubled in the last 7 years of the Liberal government. High Liberal fuel taxes, money printing, and red tape have driven up grocery prices, as Trudeau's economic advisor, Mark Carney, supported all of these costly Liberal policies. But in the last election, he presented an illusion. He promised that he would reverse everything that he had said and written and everything that the Liberal Party had done in the prior 10 years. He said that he would spend less. Well, he's now spending 7% more than when Trudeau left office. He has doubled the deficit. In fact, outside of COVID, Carney's present deficit is the biggest in Canadian history, and government spending as a share of GDP is the highest in 30 years. He has not gotten rid of a single bureaucracy or agency, but he has added 12 new ones. He promised Canada would have the fastest growing economy in the G7. He's delivered the only shrinking economy in the G7, the highest household debt in the G7, the worst food price inflation in the G7, the worst housing costs in the G7, and the second highest unemployment in the G7. He promised to be first, he delivered the worst. Pendant la dernière élection, M. Carney a créé une grande illusion. Il a dit qu'il allait moins dépenser. Depuis, il a doublé le déficit et augmenté les dépenses de 7% par rapport aux dépenses de Justin Trudeau. Hors de la pandémie, le déficit de M. Carney est le plus grand dans l'histoire de notre pays et les dépenses gouvernementales sont les plus élevées par rapport au PIB que depuis 30 ans. Il n'a éliminé aucun organisme, aucune société d'État. Il a fait le contraire. Il a ajouté de la bureaucratie. 12 nouvelles agences bureaucratiques sont créées dans un an. Il avait promis que le Canada allait avoir la croissance économique la plus forte du G7. La réalité, plein par logement, at an unimaginable scale. Nearly a year later, what has he built? Home building is flat, and his own housing agency expects it to fall by 18%. In fact, he's blocking resources. Despite Parliament rushing him unprecedented new powers to fast-track construction projects, he has not used those powers to approve a single new project. No major pipelines are approved. The much-talked-about pipeline to the Pacific currently has no start date No route, no permit, no builder. The only company that could one day build it, says Liberal laws and taxes that Mr. Carney keeps in place, will make it impossible to produce enough oil to put in the pipeline. Another illusion. You can't fill pipelines with speeches in Davos. And you can't fill hungry stomachs with fake MOUs and announcements. Overseas speeches do not put food on the table here at home. People can't eat press releases, announcements, or fake MOUs. Enough illusions. We need reality. The $90 billion Alto project is another example of a ridiculous pie-in-the-sky Liberal spending initiative that only got worse under Prime Minister Carney. The Carney Liberals are forcing every family in Canada to spend 8,000 tax dollars on a project that two-thirds say they will never use. If it ever, and by the way, that's $8,000 per family of four, if it stays on budget. And if it ever gets built, the Carney Liberals plan to force families to pay higher taxes every single year into eternity because it is expected to lose money forever. Unlike, for example, air travel, which makes money. In fact, the losses are expected to be twice as high as VIA loses every year right now. As for Carney's promise to build at speeds not seen in generations, Alto's CEO confirmed that the real construction won't begin until the year 2030, a year later than the Liberals originally announced in December. Just to be clear, in the last 3 months, they've already backed up the construction start date by a year. So without even getting a shovel in the ground, they're already missing their own deadlines. Once construction does start, it will take 7 years to build just the short leg from Ottawa to Montreal. In other words, even if the Liberals keep their promise, no one will set foot on this train until the year 2037, 11 years from now. By comparison, do you know how long it took to build the Canadian Pacific Railway that united our entire country from concept to completion? 4 years. So we built the Canadian Pacific Railway over a century ago in less than half the time that Liberals promise it will take to build this $90 billion monstrosity. Carney Liberals will confiscate farmland and private property, disrupting communities and harming the quality of life of local residents who will not even get to use the train because it won't have any stops near their homes. Canadians have seen this movie before. In 1969, the Liberal government expropriated 100,000 acres of farmland to build the Mirabel Airport right along the Montreal-Ottawa corridor. They displaced 12,000 people. In the end, the government only used 5,000 of the 100,000 acres they confiscated, and passenger flights stopped 20 years ago. Can you imagine that? They kicked 12,000 people out of their homes. They ruined 100,000 acres of land. They only used 5% of the land, and now they're not even running flights. And now they want us to repeat the entire boondoggle over again. Les Québécois ont déjà joué dans le mauvais film libéral. En 1969, les libéraux avaient exproprié plus de 100 000 for any financial sense, it would pay for itself through fares, just like airplane tickets pay the full cost of air travel. But this $90 billion liberal boondoggle does not make sense, and it does not make dollars. Like everything else the Carney Liberals do, it will make consultants, lobbyists, lawyers, bureaucrats, and other liberal insiders fabulously rich, while doing nothing for the millions of hardworking taxpayers and landowners who will suffer. Potentially, even farmers like these here will lose large parts of their lands and have their way of life completely destroyed. That is why I am announcing today that Conservatives oppose the $90 billion Liberal Alto train, that we call on the Carney Liberals to cancel it, and I am confirming that a future Conservative government will cancel this $90 billion boondoggle altogether. We will save Canadians $90 billion or $8,000 per family. We will use the savings to lower debt, taxes, and inflation. We will lower the cost of government to lower the cost of living. We will greenlight projects that pay for themselves, projects that make money rather than taking money. We will unblock resources, greenlight pipelines, ports, mines, mills, and other wildly profitable private sector projects that pay taxes in to fund healthcare, education, and other essential services rather than taking money out. We will make Canada affordable at home, safe at home, and strong at home. Aujourd'hui, la position du Parti conservateur est claire. Les taxes naturelles donning des abordables.
Identify yourself and your outlet. One question and one follow-up, please.
Harrison Faulkner, Juno News. Last weekend at the NDP convention, we saw the use of equity cards to determine speaking order based on skin color, the flying of the Palestinian and Venezuelan flags on stage, and frequent breakdown and debate over misgendering and pronouns. What's your reaction, sir, to the NDP becoming the subject of international mockery?
Well, this has been the approach of the Liberals.
Thumbs up to Harrison Faulkner. Check him out on YouTube. He's on Juno News, and he has his own account on X. He's great.
The NDP for the last 10 years. Both Liberals and NDP have taken on this approach that is completely out of line with everyday Canadians. The Canadian people want us to focus on their common sense priorities, making the country affordable, safe, and strong. Everything else is a distraction from that. Thank you.
You think the NDP is still a party for blue-collar working Canadians?
No. The NDP, just like the Liberals, wants to block resource projects, ban hunting rifles, tax fuel, stop people from driving pickup trucks. The Liberals and NDP have an anti-rural, anti-working class agenda. Over the last 10 years of NDP Liberal policies, we've seen the working class completely screwed over, unable to buy homes, unable to afford fuel and food, confiscated of their legitimate hunting rifles and their way of life. Only Conservatives will stand up for the hardworking people who build this country. We will ensure you can drive your pickup truck, you can put fuel in it, you can afford food for your family, that you're safe on your streets, that you have the right to defend yourself on your property, and that the good, solid, traditional Canadian values that built this country will do so again. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre. Tamara Ugolini from Rebel News. We saw recently, just last week, that the Liberal-packed Senate passed Bill C-15 that made sweeping changes to the Expropriation Act, allowing their high-speed rail mega project to go through and take properties just like the one that we're standing on here today. How do you plan to fight this rigged racket, in addition to calling for the cancellation of ALTO altogether, but to reform back checks and balances in place so that people's private property cannot be seized under what many are calling this liberal land grab?
That's a good way of putting it. It is a liberal land grab. Your private property is not safe under this Liberal government. We have seen that with the decision by the Liberal government to refuse to defend private property rights in the Cowichan lawsuit in the West. The Liberal government made a decision to withdraw the argument of private property rights from that lawsuit, and as a result, we saw a ruling that now potentially jeopardizes the private property of tens of thousands of British Columbians and maybe worse. We now see Mark Carney and the Liberals threatening to confiscate the private property of thousands of families along the corridor of this $90 billion ALTO monstrosity. Your property is not safe under this Liberal government. Conservatives will reinstate your right to have your property. We will stop the confiscations. Property rights are human rights.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up, the new NDP leader, Avi Lewis, says that he wants the government to open up a chain of grocery stores. Premier in Alberta, Danielle Smith, calls that communist. What do you think?
Well, she's right. This is
I don't mean to interrupt, but Avi Lewis is a full-blown communist. Like, it's obvious. If you watch any of his interviews, he's obviously a communist and a seller of Brookfield, because like free heat pumps.
The same NDP Liberal policy of government taking over everything. So look at it right now. High taxes and red tape block home building. So what is the NDP Liberal approach? Create a new home building bureaucracy. They block resource development. So Carney, with the support of the NDP, creates a new natural resources agency. Businesses can't afford to start up in Canada because of high taxes and red tape, so the Liberals and NDP support massive corporate welfare that puts the state back in charge of business. The Liberals and NDP want the government to control everything, including your money. So if you want to be back in charge of your life, your money, your land, your family, your future, the Conservatives are the only ones that will do it.
Hi, Perlita Stroh with CBC News. Just hoping to get your reflections on the passing of Stephen Lewis today, if you could respond in English and French.
Thank you. We Conservatives offer our condolences to the Lewis family on the loss of Stephen Lewis. I offer go for guns. The
uptick so far. Do you have a pro advocate, Natalie Provost, accusing your party of creating confusion about the gun buyback program and says that that has contributed to the low uptick so far? Do you have a reaction to that?
The Carney Liberals are banning hunting rifles, gopher guns. They're attacking licensed, law-abiding, trained and tested farmers, hunters, and sport shooters, while allowing rampant, repeat violent criminals to come into our country through open borders and to be released from jail within hours of their latest arrests. This liberal approach of attacking farmers, duck hunters, and sport shooters has led to a 100% increase in violent crime during the Liberal decade, while wasting billions of taxpayers' dollars. Our Conservative approach is to lock up criminals, secure our borders, and leave our hunters, sport shooters, and farmers to live their lives lawfully and peacefully. L'approche des libéraux de cibler.
Come on.
Question to ask you. What do you think about the possibility of the federal government proroguing Parliament following April 13th?
Bad idea right there. Proroguing Parliament will
I think it's time
hurt
for
my heart.
the Carney Liberals to get to work.
Yeah.
They've been in power for 11 years, including a year with Mr. Carney there, and what have they done? No pipelines approved, no major projects approved. The deficit has doubled. We have the worst food price inflation in the G7, the worst housing costs in the G7, the worst household debt in the G7, the second highest unemployment in the G7, and yet Mr. Carney barely even shows up for question period a third of the time, the lowest turnout rate of any prime minister in the last decade and a half. It's time for him to stop the illusions and start getting the results that he promised in people's everyday lives, affordable at home, safe at home, strong at home.
Hi there, this is Mark Woodhouse with Global News. I've got a question here. The Prime Minister today said there are fundamental issues in terms of China's treatment of the Uyghurs in the past, and when asked if he agrees with the 2021 House of Commons vote that China's persecution of Uyghurs is a genocide. What do you make of that response?
Can you just repeat the last part? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, let me just pull when asked if he agrees with the 2021 House of Commons vote that China's persecution of Uyghurs is a genocide, the Prime Minister today said that there are fundamental issues in terms of China's treatment of the Uyghurs in the past. And what's your take on that?
Wow. So he couldn't even agree with a motion that the Liberals adopted. Wow. So it looks like the Davos speech was all a big illusion. Remember, he said he was going to put his values ahead of superpowers and authoritarian regimes. Well, now he is showing that he will not put his values forward. Rather, he will pander to a foreign hostile dictatorship on issues of slavery and genocide. If Mr. Carney does not have the courage to stand up against slavery and genocide, what does he have the courage to do? How can he be trusted to stand up for Canada?
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with a question for Peterborough. You mentioned that nobody wants this project. Peterborough residents and City Council have both expressed.
Carney's in hot water. Like, it's obvious now. Like, he's just a liar, and the lies are catching up, it would seem.
Support for this high-speed rail project. How would you justify your opposition to local leadership and to residents here?
I will answer that, but first of all, I apologize. I forgot to include one important thing about Mr. Carney's position on Beijing.
This is going to be a doozy.
Mr. Carney continues to hold millions of dollars of investment in Brookfield, which is massively expanding its investments in the People's Republic of China. He flew to Beijing in order to secure a massive loan from a government-backed bank just before he became Prime Minister. So what my message to Mr. Carney is, it's time for him to put people ahead of profit, to put values ahead of corporate interests, and to stand up for what is right, as he promised in his Davos speech allusion. So on the question of the support, the people don't support this $90 billion Alto monstrosity. Go around to the communities. I would encourage you to go knock on the doors in Peterborough and ask them, are you prepared to pay $8,000 in taxes just to build the project, and then pay higher taxes every year forever to subsidize its permanent annual losses? The answer is no. Canadians across this country can find a better way to spend $8,000, and it's time for us to put an end to these costly pie-in-the-sky liberal schemes that have given us the worst food price inflation, the highest housing costs, and some of the worst tax burdens anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joelle. I work for the Peterborough Examiner.
Hi there.
A little earlier you mentioned that it's been projected that this won't be a money-making project. I haven't heard anyone talk about how much it will cost to take the train. Could you comment on that a little bit?
Good question. We know nothing's free. I mean, if it costs $90 billion to build it, and then it loses $2 billion a year every year after that, then somebody's going to have to pay for it. So either you're going to have to be a very wealthy passenger who can afford the costly ticket, or you're going to be one of the poor taxpayers who will never get on the train but will be forced to pay thousands of dollars in higher taxes to fund it. So other than a tiny group of liberal lobbyists, consultants, lawyers, bureaucrats, and other insiders, everyone's going to be worse off.
Thank you. That's all the questions we have today. This concludes today's event.
Thanks very much, everyone. Good to see you.
All right. So let's, I guess we're going to, come on. Where did the mouse go? Sorry, gang. I lost my mouse for a moment. Here we go. We're going to cross over to this. Should be fun.
So I have me a new Canadian that stopped in today, called me earlier, said he needed a rim for his trailer. I said, you sure you just need a rim? He said, yep, just a rim. I said, okay. So we showed up in the yard here today, and look what we got. Just need a rim, bud. Just one rim. The other one seems to be okay, because the tire is still attached, is what he said. I'm like, really? Isn't this fucking fantastic? There's not a cross member left in the trailer. She's busted wide open. It's a reefer unit. You can feel the cold air coming out of the floor because the floor is wide open. But you just...
If the defendant will please stand.
The last 25 years of his life, much of it in prison, has all led up to this moment.
In the District Court of El Paso County, Texas, 409th Judicial District, the State of Texas versus Daniel Villegas, number 94-0D09328. Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
For the first time since he was 16 years old, 25 years ago, Daniel Villegas is a free man.
Mr. Villegas, you have been...
It was random, inexplicable, and scary. She was getting her toddler out of the car when this woman she's never seen before confronted her and attacked her with a knife.
The world is going crazy, like all over the news all the time.
To say this crime is a shock is an understatement. Wednesday, around 11 a.m., a woman was getting her toddler out of the car in the parking lot of the Cotswold Harris Teeter when she says another woman who pulled out of the parking spot behind her stopped her car in the middle of the lot, got out, cursed at her, and attacked her with a knife.
I was facing my toddler, getting him out of his seat, and thankfully turned around. And she was coming at me.
Brought forward, obviously, an opinion that we get pushback on a lot of times, and that's with respect to the industrial carbon price and its impact on food prices. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that, if you could, because this is something that's important to everyday Canadians.
Thank you so much, member. An industrial carbon tax really is the worst of all worlds. It's going to make life more expensive here in Canada. It's going to drive Canadian jobs south of the border, and it doesn't work. And, you know, for the better part of a decade, the government tried to convince Canadians that carbon taxes made them richer. Canadians didn't believe it then. They still don't believe it now, right? You look at polling, which shows that about 70% of Canadians understand that businesses aren't just going to eat the extra costs, right? Most or some of the cost is going to be passed on to consumers through higher prices. Very easy to understand. You impose massive taxes on oil and gas refineries. That makes it more expensive to drive. You impose taxes on fertilizer plants. That increased cost for farmers. It makes it more expensive to eat. You impose taxes on electricity, that makes it more expensive to live.
Yeah. Connolly and Wayne O'Rourke, but in fact, I believe you went to prison before them, right?
I think so, yes, because they all went to prison after the August kind of unrest, didn't it, which happened about halfway through my sentence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they all went to afterwards, so I suppose I was maybe a canary in the coal mine kind of situation with my case.
Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about why you went to prison?
Yeah, so I ran an international stickering group called the 100 Handers, and we just distributed these stickers. I mean, it was just me, but they're anonymous. Anyone could download them. Anyone could put them up. And after doing it for 6 years, finally counter-terrorism arrested me.
Wow.
And they brought me in, but by their own admission, all the actual stickers were legal and truthful. However, because I have right-wing politics, I can't engage in this kind of legal speech because that's hate. So, yeah, we were kind of stuck in a catch-22 there.
How long did you go away for, sorry?
I got a 2-year sentence.
When Lala hits the road, his favorite destination is no surprise. Where else? The fish store.
Come on.
Because I think my economy can save Canada and make the economy stronger.
That's what he promised in the election almost a year ago, but how's that whole elbows up thing going right now?
Because right now things are too many change. The war, right?
Oh, so the war in Iran?
And there's so many things happen. For example, state fighting Iraq and Iraq fighting the war. So, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Because
they're doing this thing, like they're showing a bunch of videos, it would seem online now, that show the Twin Towers being impacted by no jets. Like, who knows? that could be all made up.
مشاريع كثيرة في العالم هدامة وللأسف اليوم إن أغلب
It could all be made up. All of this stuff could be made up.
هذه المشاريع الهدامة موجودة في الشرق الأوسط وبجوارنا في المملكة العربية السعودية. هناك نظام إيراني نعرف جميعا بأنه هدفه هدف أيديولوجي بحت، ليس هدفه خدمة مصالح إيران والمواطنين الإيرانيين، بل هدفه خدمة مصالح الأيديولوجية الإيرانية، والأدلة كثيرة من 30 سنة الماضية، وآخرها حصلوا على 150 مليار دولار لم يبنوا حتى شارع أو مجمع سكني أو مجمع صناعي في إيران، فهدفهم واضح.
Anyways, hopefully you all can see that.
The CCFR, and I just wanted to come to you today with a little message. Today is March 31st, 2026. Today is the final day of the government's buyback, assault-style firearm compensation program, fiasco, nightmare, disaster, gun grab. Call it whatever you want, but call it over, because today's the last day. So as we all await the clock to strike midnight, we will not turn into a pumpkin. We will be just fine. I know for those of us who have held the line and not declared our firearms, we are going to wait out the eventual decision from the Supreme Court. And for those of you who did declare your firearms, I get it. I understand. The government put out a lot of scary messaging, talk of charges or suspending your firearms license or doing all kinds of things to you. But I'm here to tell you none of that is true. You are protected by the amnesty just the same as the rest of us. And yes, those of you with restricted fall in that category as well, or previously restricted. Anyways, the good news is it's not too late. You can withdraw your declaration, and it's really easy. It doesn't even take long. All the instructions on how to do that can be found at ccfr.ca. It's as easy as a simple phone call. So you can do that. You can withdraw all the way up to the point where they come to confiscate your guns. So yeah, it's really important that if you felt nervous and you declared, I get it. It's okay. I'm not going to beat you up for it. But you do have the opportunity to withdraw and make it right.
She's wound up. You can tell.
What do you think of the Prime Minister's response?
My God.
He's walking a tightrope here, and it has a little bit to do with what's going on in the United States right now. But most of all, Vashi, I would love to know what was going through Doug Ford's head that time, because he had this strangest smile on his face as he's watching it all go down. I'm sure he's saying, I'm glad it's not me this time. In the United States, there is an inquiry going on under Section 301, and it has to do with whether or not there's forced labor in supply chains. And it's against Canada. We're one of the countries named. If the U.S. finds that there is forced labor in a supply chain, then unfortunately they can put tariffs on. They can choose what they can do with respect to our economy. So the Prime Minister has a very fine line to walk. He can't admit that there is forced labor because it plays into the hands of the United States, but equally...
Can you, I'm just putting it together, what we're watching. Oh my God, they did that?
He can't say that there isn't, because we all know that there is. So it's a tough situation that Mr. Ma's put the Prime Minister in.
Lisa, I'll start with you. What did you think of the Prime?
It's weird, man. I can't
From this one, Groundhog Day. U.S. Air Force General Gregory Guillot, who's the head of NORAD, was at a U.S. Senate committee hearing recently and said that fifth-generation fighter jets aren't needed to defend North America's borders and that they're better used attacking overseas targets. He said his preference was to see continued modernization of the fourth-generation fighters. And so my question is, how do you explain that buying a full F-35 fleet...
Like, this cocksucker gives a shit. Mark Kearney is an asshole.
...that Canada might not even need for continental defense is a good use of taxpayer dollars.
What?
And have you read the government's F-35 review report yet?
There's a lot in that. The first is, we have to take a range of, the government will take a full range of considerations into making this important decision. The first and foremost is defending Canadians and what is best suited with other equipment, with our allies and capabilities to defend Canadians and all of Canada, very much including the Arctic. And you've seen a series of announcements around those, including around Arctic.
Today is the Trans Day of Visibility. This is a day not only to celebrate, but to stand with members of the trans community. Members in my own family, members across this country. And this is a community that does so much in our country, that contribute to so many different areas, but it's also a community under attack. It's a community, let's face it, that has faced an enormous amount of hatred, and they've been targeted with violence. And this is a day not just
I wonder why
to stand with folks, but to recognize that we all have to stand every day.
Some people deserve hate. Solomon is one of them. He's a loser.
Rest of the world. Now here's why. So let me ask you a question. If you gave a country the second largest landmass on Earth, planted it directly on top of the world's third largest proven oil reserves, surrounded it with 20% of the planet's fresh surface water, handed it a border with the richest economy in the history of humanity, and filled its universities with world-class researchers, and then asked it to build a thriving civilization, how badly could that country mess up? It had everything going for it. There's one report that came out recently, which pretty much represents how Canada feels about itself and how far it has fallen. So Canada, according to the World Happiness Report that came out just recently, sits at 25th place, which is Canada's lowest ranking since the survey began. And keep in mind, in 2015, Canada was 5th place on the entire planet. In fact, the only comparable drop in happiness index of a country during that time were countries that experienced war, famine, or complete economic collapse. Canada experienced none of those, and yet there it is, falling 20 places in essentially a decade. But here's the part that really woke a lot of Canadians up. Yes, the overall ranking is 25th, but when you break it down by age, Canadians that were older, specifically those that were over the age of 60, ranked top 10 in the world for happiness, and Canadians that were 25 or under ranked 71st. The only countries in the world with a steeper decline in youth happiness have been Jordan, Venezuela, Lebanon, and Afghanistan. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's been some pretty
wrong. This is America.
Watch. This is crazy. This is pretty fun. Like
America.
America.
Are we great yet? Make America great. Is this what you fucking want? You dumb fucks. This is why I cried. This is why I cry. This is why we're fucking all fucking a hot mess. Because we saw this shit coming! Who the hell are you? I've cut most of you motherfucking mega ass twats out of my life a long fucking time ago. What'd you do that for? But I'm here to tell you. Evan! Evan! They're attacking all of us! I fucking hate all of you who voted for this!
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama.
One of you who have stayed silent even fucking more. I hope you're fucking happy.
The Islamic regime. You support the Islamic regime in Iran. How many people did they kill this year? How do you justify the genocide of Iranians?
Nobody believes in your lies.
There's video evidence of it. Are you saying that Iranians were not killed in the tens of thousands this year, sir?
Believes in your lies. Get the out of my sight.
Why do you support the Islamic regime in Iran, sir?
You're child killers.
Why do you support the child killers in Iran?
Zionist child killers.
What about the child killers in Iran? They're executing children. They're hanging children in Iran.
Zionists are pedophiles and child sex traffickers.
Actually, child marriage is legal in Iran, sir. Child marriage is legal in Iran.
Nobody believes in your lies anymore, you bitch.
Do you know how many women, how many girls under 15 gave birth in Iran this year?
October 7. October.
That's enough.
Activist Isabel Brown had a message for her fellow Gen Z women.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start.
They used to come after women of color and accuse women of color of doing this very thing.
It wraps a woman's worth up in her ovaries in a way that for too long has happened. The whole women's movement was not about bucking the trend of staying at home or loving tradition. It was giving women a choice to do what they wanted.
You're telling people...
Your presentation. Thank you, sir. And I think you did bring up this idea of a Trump-like premier prime minister. And then you probably heard the next day the Chief Justice mentioned un tyran. I think so you may have put the seed in his head. Good. I'm wondering what you think of the fact that the Chief Justice did bring that up the next day.
Actually, I don't want to comment the interaction with justices, but clearly we have to think about one thing. We clearly don't know if there will be a mini Trump at one point in Canada, but there's a mini Trump in a lot of places around the world right now, in Argentina, in Italy, Sweden, Hungary, and such, maybe in France. And what I said.
After being struck by the officer, the woman stopped resisting. However, the female officer's actions shocked even her fellow officers at the scene. Why strike her twice, without any clear justification? Responding officers immediately called for an ambulance, and the woman was transported to the hospital for treatment. As emotions began to settle, Officer Christie appeared to realize that she had gone too far and quickly began searching for excuses to justify her behavior.
I was coming. I know. I didn't know where that came from. Honestly, she would not get out of the car. You do what you got to do, okay? She was non-compliant. You did what you had to do.
Point of information. My name is Nicholas Torno. I come from Kingston in the Islands. My pronouns are he, they. And I have a question about the video we just watched, the tribute to Jagmeet Singh. I want to know how much money it cost. I want to know how much time it wasted out of the convention. And I want to know who decided on it.
Rising on a personal point of privilege, that comment that was just made is absolutely unacceptable. I'm in my house of party.
Or kind of a trickle-down effect from that viewpoint in terms of engaging with the world as it is, as opposed to how we wish it would be.
One hopes not. One hopes that we take the Prime Minister at his word and that he raised this issue with President Xi. All you have to do is watch the exchange between Mr. Ma and Madam McQuaig Johnson, and it's not just disturbing; it's appalling. I mean, the suggestion that forced labor is going to be put on display for a visiting scholar, which was what he was trying to get at, it would be absurd if it weren't so lamentable. The danger for the Liberals is that they have a reputation of being soft on China. We go back to 2013 or 14 when Justin Trudeau said that he admired the Chinese's ability to do things very quickly. Of course, it's easy to do that when any kind of dissent is suffocated. You think of Minister McCallum, who said that it would be good for the Liberal Party. He was telling his Chinese interlocutors in Beijing, if the government in China were not seen to be tough on Canada. So they've got to be careful that they're not seen as soft on China. The reality is that we are going to have to do business with China, no matter what. They are, the second biggest military power and fastest growing economy in the world. But we also have to be clear-eyed about these things. The RCMP has said that they operate police stations here. They've said that they've closed up some of them, but there are investigations that are ongoing. That's a real problem. We also, as a journalist, I can't remember, I can't let people forget people like Jimmy Lai, who's been sentenced for 20 years for doing his job, and Li Yanhe, who 3 years, a Taiwan-based Chinese publisher, for doing their jobs as well. These are difficult issues, absolutely, but we can't and never should shy away from raising them.
Well, Kate, Carney did say during the election, I believe it was the debate, the English language debate, that China is the #1 threat in terms of security of Canada. But he also has talked then and since about being pragmatic while also trying to be principled. Do you think that he has started to swing too much to the pragmatic side, and is that okay, considering we need to diversify trade, or is that going to be a problem for him?
Yeah, I think it's beyond pragmatism. It's coddling. For a government MP to deny forced labor in China is to deny that the sky is blue. And it's really hard to suggest that this is just, a one-off caucus member, making comments that don't speak on behalf of the government, as, Mr. LeBlanc did today, something even the Prime Minister couldn't bring himself to do. But Mr. Ma was on that trip to China, and it was very deliberate questioning that happened of the witness. And I think that it is troubling that the Prime Minister can't bring himself to say very clearly, so that is on the record, ahead of this trip, for the finance minister, that forced labor exists in China and that this is a major consideration as we undertake trade. Of course, we will have to do trade with China. There's no doubt about that. The countries that are engaging in trade with China have much more stable interprovincial economies that don't have as many vulnerabilities as we do in Canada to being exposed by the CCP and the regime. That's where you see countries have successful trade. Right now, we are leaving ourselves very exposed and, in my view, cozying up far too much to a regime that has a lot of human rights abuses.
And Karina, just quickly, if I can, as the only non-political person here, I'm going to dare to suggest communications advice. I thought it was a mistake not to have Mr. Ma come out in public and say, I'm sorry, with no subordinate clauses. He forced the Prime Minister into doing it. You can bet as soon as Mr. Ma returns to Parliament Hill, he's going to be asked about it again. Other avenues of inquiry will be open.
Have you guys noticed they're showing a lot of footage of the Twin Towers before they went down, just being struck by something else? Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to mess with that.
Well, there's a lot of cucked out men out there, cucked out by their job, cucked out by life.
Yeah.
You just stop being a man. And then you stop getting any respect from the people that know you because they know you're kind of a bitch. The people that really know you, like your wife and your kids, really know you. Like, oh, Harry's a fucking bitch.
Yeah, there's
He's
so
always
many
crying.
boomers like that, though.
Yeah.
There's so many where it's the dad is so quiet and so distant, and the mom is just so up everyone's ass.
Thoreau wrote about that. Like, whenever he wrote this, he said most men live lives of quiet desperation.
That's fucked.
Yeah.
That's fucked.
That's fucked, but that's real.
But why does it happen?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. Because you stop challenging yourself, or you never did. You stop growing, and you don't have any character. You don't exhibit a strong will, and you don't have discipline. And then, you're emotionally disconnected from the life that you've chosen, and then you have a job where you have to pretend to be someone you're not for 8 hours a day and work for a boss who's a piece of shit.
And then you lose the job because the job becomes irrelevant.
Yeah,
and then
you're a broken man, and then you're like 46 years old, and they're telling you to learn to code.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great.
Yeah. That's.
All right, gang, we're wrapping up right there. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney, we're trying a few different new things. I like this piece where we just float around the internet. We'll get better at that. We can tighten that up. Have better stories to tell. Anyhow, it's fun. Thank you all for watching Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney. Smash the like, hit subscribe. You guys are a fun audience to make videos for. That's for sure. We'll try to make the videos better. Deal? Ciao for now.